Welcome to Strategic Advice. I'm Phil Haun, your host here, and today I'm joined with Kelly Matush who's a assistant professor at Florida State. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and this is season two of Strategic Advice aimed at the lucky uh, young PhDs who have landed that elusive tenure track job. And now this is advice on how to start that career. And Kelly has been kind enough to talk to us today about some of the lessons that she's learned on establishing a network, how to approach a new department. So Kelly, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. When I first talked to Phil about doing this, I was thinking, what did I not know when I first showed up at FSU? My first job was at Texas Tech, and now I'm at FSU. And there's a couple of things that I thought would be interesting to talk about. So the first thing that I learned was that departments can have very different norms and expectations about the time that you commit to teaching and service and research. And I think I came from my grad program at UCSD, and I had sort of an idea of what that probably looked like. And then when I joined different departments in my postdoc and then as assistant professor, I learned that there's just really different ideas, really different cultures. And that's not to say one is better than the other, but if you're joining one hoping to get tenure in one particular department, I learned that it can be very useful to try to figure out how other people are spending their time, right? How much service are they doing? How many reviews are they writing? How do they take letters of recommendation in their class? How do they approach teaching? And what do they prioritize in their time? And I think many people that become academics, and especially coming out of grad school, we have a tendency to really want to do everything well, which is fantastic. But there's many things to balance, and of course you can't do everything. You'll burn yourself out, and with the research being the long-term goals and sometimes the teaching and the service being the short-term goals, it can be hard to find that balance and be productive. And so I found it helpful to have real talk conversations with other people in the department about how many hours a week they were spending on each thing and what they said no to, like how they approached, teaching obligations, how they structured their exams, right? Like one thing I learned is that there's different ideas about how much writing we'll have in your exams versus if you're just doing multiple choice. And there's very different ideas in different departments about what good teaching looks like and what sort of is the expectation. And I think it's good to, of course, hold yourself to a high standard and do work you're proud of, but make sure you're not doing things and investing in projects that your department maybe isn't rewarding you in the way that you think they might be. One part of this learning process for me was the annual review. And so this is something I didn't even know about. Like at the end of my first year as assistant professor, the chair in my department was like, all right, Kelly, submit your materials for your annual review. And I was like, what? I didn't know, right? So if you don't know, then we're in good company. But at the end of the year, the department has some sort of process, maybe a committee where they look at what you've done that year. My department currently looks at the past 2 years to sort of smooth things out. And if departments have different systems of evaluating your productivity in research, service, and teaching. We have a numeric system where we rank things in the committee. And I think figuring out how that's done in your department, both in a legal sense, like what are the rules are, and then having like casual conversations with people about how they think about that review, how they try to present themselves to that committee, and what they've learned over the years as maybe it's changed over time, and even like what they think it should be ideally, right? Because I think this annual review is a great opportunity to have conversations with your peers about how they're doing, what they're doing, and more importantly, when you're on the tenure track, like what you're doing and how you're doing. So the second thing I wanted to mention is about seeking out different people in your department to pitch yourself. Like, of course, we all talk about selling ourselves in the job talk, and that's how you get the job, and that's great. And I think in general, after you join a department, people are on your team. They hired you and they want you there, but they're also hoping that you're being productive and they want to know that you're doing good work. And I think part of that is showing them the process of what you're engaged in and showing them the working papers and getting their feedback. And like, especially the people that aren't in your subfields, they might not have the chance to see your work in a seminar or at a conference. These people are still voting on your tenure, right? And so it's good. I try to do this every year, or just like get lunch and be like, hey, did you know I'm working on this paper, or I have this survey? And like, it's great if they happen to know a method that will be useful, but even if like it's not related to their work at all, like they're your colleague, and getting their feedback is great for you and your tenure and great for your work, right? Because they're a resource. Also very important, I think, is to reach out to the people that you don't know and maybe are not as friendly. So I think in general, there's some people that are inclined to welcome you and reach out and offer to read your papers, and that's great. And that's a great foundation, and you should know who those people are that are really actively trying to support you. But you should also maintain communication with the people that maybe have, I don't know, like less of a warm exterior. They're still voting on you, right? And they're still a great resource. And so the sample of people that will tell you how they feel about you is maybe not representative of the overall department. And so keeping a pulse on like how generally people think of you and your work, I think is a good way to like stay on top of things in your department. And I absolutely think of this as a collaborative, friendly discussion, certainly part of my job, right? But like not at all like, anything negative or conflictual. And then finally, like, I think people talk a lot about having mentors, right? And I think I got assigned a mentor, and I initially thought of my mentor network as like quite narrow, the people that would help me write great research. And that's a very good starting point. But more and more as I've been working through, developing my role in this job, I find that I need a wide range of mentors that can talk about how to advocate for yourself in the department, right? Or like how to navigate a sticky situation, or how to approach, a conference that's not really a good fit, but you're trying to get into a different field, right? And so these sort of softer skills, how to navigate tension in a committee that you're on, or how to be proactive in finding service commitments that are productive for you, right? And so finding a set of mentors that can speak to different aspects of this in your department, but also in the college. Often there might be obstacles to how things are done that your department doesn't have an answer to, but maybe other departments have a creative answer. And then definitely in the field, right? So as I think after you sort of emerge from grad school, you get more involved in the broader field. And there's a great set of people and mentors outside of your own department that can often help you figure out the best way to approach that department.
Okay, well, those are actually some really good ideas, and I couldn't help but think, I served as a dean for 8 years. We did a bunch of hiring of assistants, and one of the things the challenge I always had was what the assistants didn't know, and there sometimes the unwillingness to approach different levels. So you've had experience with two departments. What's your approach going with, I won't say older faculty, faculty at a different stage, full professors, chairs? Is there a different approach that you take with them, the more peer, like assistants or associates?
That's a great question. I think like in a few departments I've been a part of or heard of, I think there is a natural, like the assistant professors have a little club, right? Because like we're all kind of in the same trench. And I think there's a lot of variation in how engaged and approachable the senior faculty are, and how much they view themselves, how hierarchical they view the department, right? And so sometimes more senior people view it as a hierarchy, and I think that's important to respect. If you're joining that, like, then you need to approach them that way. But I do think that people that are engaged in the department want the department to be strong. And so finding like a respectful email asking for them to read a paper or to talk about the department or your work, I think anyone in the department, I think that would be a valuable endeavor.
Yeah, I think some people, brand new in a department don't know who to ask, or maybe feel like they're imposing by asking. And actually, a lot of people with experience wait to be asked their opinion. I found out, if an assistant comes and seeks me out, it's obviously important to them. I'll give extra time for that. So I highly encourage to do the kinds of.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Phil. I've assumed that, right? But I hope that's how my senior colleagues feel too.
Oh yeah, I mean their future, their reputations are based upon your performance in the department because their reputations are based upon their department. So nobody wants their department to fail, and so everybody is pulling for you to succeed or should be. There's another thing, which is I liked how you focused on trying to understand the norms and expectations of a department. I've been struck as well about. Uh, Focusing only on that your department because that's who you deal with on a daily basis. That's where you get the immediate feedback. I've always been surprised by the degree to which assistant faculty don't take advantage of resources. Like I give you a simple, like a faculty handbook,
Mm,
something produced by a deanery or a department can provide a lot of information on how the process works. So you can find out what your department does, but tenure decisions are made above the department level. So being able to reach out and ask questions. Well, the faculty handbook says I can apply for teaching relief at this point, but but the norms are this. Is there any leeway? And sometimes departments, like I wasn't aware. Also,
yeah.
other resources, monetary, for research or other things, can come above the department. And a lot of times, departments are just so focused internally that they don't think about the other resources.
I think that's an excellent point. I think that the way the department does things, sometimes departments are kind of small and the people have been there for a long time, and they both tend to assume that everyone kind of knows how things are done, and then also that that's how things should be done, right? And as a new person, they don't even realize what you don't know, I think. And so, like you said, the assistant professor might feel like they're being imposing when they're just asking a question that like seems obvious to other people that have been hanging around for decades, right? So I think, yeah, asking questions and getting involved, from what I've seen, has always been very welcome.
Okay, and we got time for one more question from me. And so the question I have is, uh, what mistake did you make? You've been in two department. Mistake did you make that you learned from that you'd be willing to share with a brand new tenure track professor?
Yeah. Um, so like I think you do need to balance how open you are with people, right? And there's certainly you don't this is a professional setting and you want to be professional and with your words. But I think in general I've erred too much on not being honest and trusting when I've been trying to navigate awkward situations with hiring and figuring out the best path for me. And like in retrospect, I realized that these people also wanted the best path for me, right? And would never expect me to like not try to seek out the best resources for myself. And so I think it's definitely important to be cognizant of, the professional setting and that, but to be genuine, I think is very valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common problem from faculty, from students, just, opening up a little bit and having that trust can actually go a long way as far as your development. Well, I tell you what, I love this topic. I'm glad you presented it. The I thought it would go a little bit different way in terms of networking. This seems much more organic, though, in terms of how you develop and how you can contribute. And I would encourage the other part of that is it has to do with giving because you'll soon be on the other side. It's amazing how quick those years slip by. Is remembering what it was like when you were on that side, and reaching out that extra hand really goes a long way.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us today on Strategic Advice.